Hello, everyone. As has been commented so often through the past many months, we are living through unprecedented times. Thanks to all of you for your commitment to keeping our communities safe through practicing social distancing, wearing masks, great hand washing, and all the other infection control procedures at your disposal. We've reached a new milestone in this journey. The FDA has approved the use of the COVID-19 vaccines. However, we know that many of you have questions and concerns regarding the safety and efficacy of these vaccines. To help answer your questions, we've asked our medical consultant, Dr. James Avery, to provide some facts around the new vaccines. Dr. Avery is a board-certified internal medicine, pulmonary, hospice, and palliative medicine physician, and he is a certified nursing home medical director. He has worked with Aegis Therapies throughout the pandemic to help us keep our staff and communities safe for the past year. As always, thank you, Dr. Avery, for your time and expertise.
This is probably the most important lecture I am ever going to give. I have given hundreds, perhaps thousands of lectures to medical students, residents, nurses, university settings. But we are in the middle of a pandemic, a worldwide pandemic. And the information I'm going to give you is going to can save lives, can help you, your loved ones, colleagues. And that is my goal today, is to help save lives. So listen carefully. The University of Michigan does a poll every year of U.S. adults. And this year they elected to do a poll on what are people thinking about this COVID vaccine. And what you can see is only 20% wants to get it as soon as possible. Others said, I'll wait, I'm not so sure, don't really want to get it. This was a surprise to me. I expected the number to be 80% would want to get it as soon as possible if they knew the information that I know. And then I'm going to look at nursing homes. Nursing homes have been surveyed to look at how do they view the vaccine? And it was very similar. About almost 30% said they would wait, about 20% said they're unsure. And so we see this hesitancy for the vaccine. There are lots of reasons for it, but let's talk about the pandemic first, and then let's dig into the vaccine more. And I think all these folks that we just polled would have a very different view. So there's two fundamental truths about this pandemic right now today. First, we've never been closer to defeating the pandemic, to defeating the COVID-19 virus because of this vaccine. Long term, just a few months from now, the outlook has never been brighter. But at the same time, we are actually going through some pretty agonizing days right now. And the next few days and weeks are going to get worse, unfortunately. We're going to see more cases and more deaths. So the question is, when will this pandemic end? And the answer is pretty straightforward. It's when we have herd immunity. Herd immunity, that's when you get enough people who are infected or have immunity that, if you get a couple cases here and there are fine, but you won't see any more widespread outbreaks. In other words, once you get to a certain percent of people who have immunity, suddenly the environment becomes safer. How much do you need? Well, typically 40 to 60% is what most folks say. And it can be as high as 70% in high density areas like New York City, or it can be 30 to 40% even in very rural areas, say like Nebraska or something like that. So how do we define herd immunity? Well, you add up the vaccine's immunity, plus natural immunity, plus cross-reactivity immunity. And so the key factor is the vaccine, because natural immunity is only about 15%. Our goal is to get to those higher numbers. So what's the key ingredient? The key ingredient is a safe and effective vaccine, one that's launched well and is accepted by the public. That's the key. So how does a vaccine work? Typically, we put a little bit of the germ or parts of the virus that can cause disease. We kill it and we weaken it so it can't make a person sick. We inject it, and they get the immune system response that they would get, in fact, if they had the illness. But they never get sick. That's what makes vaccines so powerful. You develop immunity to the disease without ever having to get the disease first. It's almost miraculous, really. And when we think about the COVID-19 vaccine, it's even more miraculous. What we know is that there's this protein on the surface of the virus. And so what we can do is when your body builds immunity, it can block this protein. That's how it gets into our cells. It blocks the protein, and therefore the virus is stopped right there. It cannot get into the human cell. The question some people have is, okay, I get all that, but how did they make it so fast? That makes me worried. I worry about that. Well, the first thing was messenger RNA technology. That was key because in messenger RNA, we don't inject any part of the virus. And by the way, that's the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines. We inject the messenger RNA, and that makes the protein be produced. And then we've had an incredible number of volunteers. The NIH posted a request for volunteers for this vaccine on a Friday in July. By Monday, 130,000 people had signed up. Kudos to those soldiers who went out there and wanted to be volunteers. And the recent surge has helped us. You can't test the vaccine if you're not having cases because you have to compare who's getting sick to who's not. And that surge has actually accelerated the vaccines. And finally, at-risk manufacturing. As soon as these companies came up with the vaccine, they started making lots of it, and the government paid for that. You see, normally you make sure the vaccine is first safe and effective, and it's been tested, and it's been approved, and then you manufacture it. That delay cost months, even years sometimes. So in this case, it was at-risk manufacturing. The other thing that's been great is the FDA. Oh my goodness. They've gone to unusual lengths to reassure the public. Again, over 30,000 people in the Moderna and the Moderna and the Pfizer trials. They weren't just content with antibodies. It had to prove it prevented infections and prevented severe infections. And they followed everybody for at least 2 months. Almost all vaccine side effects occur within 6 weeks. Finally, they have been transparent, they live stream everything, and there's been no political meddling. I can't say the same thing for the CDC, but the FDA, no political meddling. You can trust that. So when we think about these vaccines, what did these studies show? All of these volunteers, all of these folks. Efficacy was 95%. Shell life, they're used at very, very low temperatures. That's because the enzyme doesn't last very long. This messenger RNA, the enzymes degrade it rather quickly. So let's look at these vaccines, and when we think about it, we want to see efficacy, right? Well, efficacy is incredible. In the latest studies, it's about 20 times more efficacious when they had the vaccine versus the placebo. Remember, we're looking at 30,000 folks in both groups, and we look at the number of people who got sick, the number of people who got severely ill. It's 20 times less in the vaccine group. That's a 95% efficacy. Every scientist has said, astounding, incredible. You know, the average flu vaccine is about 40% effective. On a good year, maybe 60%. On a bad year, maybe 20%. 95% is phenomenal. And side effects are minimal. Severe side effects in the Pfizer vaccine, the highest was only 3%. In the Moderna, maybe 9%. But it's things like headaches, it's things like fatigue, muscle aches, those type of things. Now, a fair number of people are going to get mild side effects. They may have to take a Tylenol or so, maybe a little fever, maybe a little muscle aches. But those mean that the vaccine is working. So there are plenty of reasons for you and your loved ones to be vaccinated besides helping to end this pandemic, besides helping the country move on. It's your own health. I just had a physician, a young physician, who got seriously ill with COVID-19 and is getting IV treatments at her home. It's your families, your friends, your colleagues, your patients. You don't have to be tested anymore for COVID-19. I know you'll miss that. Air travel access. Some people are saying the vaccine will be needed to travel and it's completely free. The federal government pays for the vaccine. But besides that, if you work in nursing homes and you're working with patients and residents, over 100,000 people have died in nursing homes already from COVID. 40% of all deaths in the US have occurred in nursing homes. It's basically impossible to keep it out when it's in the community. We can prevent 10,000, 20,000, possibly more deaths by getting vaccinated for those who work and the residents who are in nursing homes. Now let's get more personal. My mom is 90 years old. She lives in Florida. I want her to be the first person online to get this vaccine. I love my mom. I am convinced this vaccine is the right thing to do, and I would love to be second online. So, what is the key ingredient to ending this pandemic? A safe and effective vaccine? Check, we have that. The second and third ingredient is you. You getting the vaccine, you telling your residents and colleagues and friends and family to get it also.